Hello, welcome back to Crafting Ruby Dreams. Well, I'm saying welcome back to myself. But if you are new here, welcome to Crafting Ruby Dreams, where I talk about planners, goal setting, writing, publishing, and getting right with my finances. So it has been a few weeks since I have been live on the channel. I have been very, very busy. And part of what I want to talk about today is how do you get yourself reset, mainly mentally, frankly, after when you've been like overwhelmed by life and a lot of stuff. And I do have a question. I put up a question box on Instagram the other day. If you'd like to follow me over there, it is just Crafting Ruby Dreams, all one word, no spaces, same spelling. And I am just finding it so I can answer. And I'm glad I took a screenshot. So I got to pull up my app. There it is. Okay. So soon after my last live, I attended the Apollycon conference convention event. I kept calling it a conference while I was there because I miss going to writing conferences. It was not a writing conference. It was a reader event. It was if you've never heard of Apollycon before, it is for primarily romance readers. The readers of all types of fiction are welcome. It's just that the authors who are there are primarily romance or romance adjacent authors. And there were over, I want to say, there were definitely over 100 authors there. I forget what the original count was because there were a number of authors who had to back out for various reasons. Some were formally announced, others were not. And I will get into that when I start answering the question. But it is run by Jennifer L Armentrout, who you may have heard of. She writes fantasy romance of what's kind of called a new adult age, which is basically people in their early 20s roughly, but I think she has also written young adult as well. So if you are all interested in it, the next event is going to be April of 2023, and there's going to be an announcement this weekend in their attendee Facebook group. And even if you haven't attended, you can join the attendee Facebook group, I believe. So they're going to make an announcement of when tickets go on sale for next year's event this weekend at some point. So, all right. The question that I received for when I asked for questions to be asked during this live stream, the one question I received was, heard mixed things about Apollycon. Love to hear your thoughts and if you recommend it. I have attended, let's see, 3 in-person Apollycons. Has been in DC since 2018. Prior to 2018, it was in, I think they held it twice in different parts of the country. Jennifer is actually somewhat local to DC. So this is the largest city by her. So it makes the most sense since she didn't really want to travel around, I think, for her to hold the event here. And there have been a number of other reader events in the romance world for numerous years. Lori Foster has held her, I think it's the Romance Reader and Author Get Together, RAGT, that has been going on for, God, close to 20 years. An unofficial event that happened for a number of years was a Nora Roberts fan event, which I frequently attended. And so, but that was slightly different in that it was very relatively loosely organized, and it was primarily to come see Nora, as well as whichever authors she was had invited to the bookstore that she and her husband own. So it wasn't like a mass amount of authors like these other events. Another more recent event that has been extremely popular, and they just announced their lineup for 2023, is Book Bonanza, which is hosted by Colleen Hoover. So, and there's also Readers on the River. That's another one I'm aware of. And I've heard of others, but I can't the names of them do not come to mind. So those are within the primarily romance world. So I have a fair amount of experience in addition to attending the loosely organized Nora Roberts events, where I also attended the what used to be known as the Romantic Times Book Lovers Convention, which varied in size, but could be very huge. And that was kind of a cross between a conference, because they had a number of tracks and panels that were targeted toward aspiring writers. This event at Apollycon, they did have panels, but to the best of my knowledge, there was possibly only one that was targeted towards aspiring authors. And I don't know how much of it was to aspiring authors as much as introducing people to the industry of romance publishing. I did not attend that panel, so I can't say for sure as to whether or not that who the real target audience was, but I do remember seeing that on the panel list as opposed to panelist. I had a Titan ticket this year, which is the highest level of access ticket. This was the first year I had the Titan ticket. This 2022 event and previous years, there were 3 level of tickets. Deity, which just gave you access to the signing on Saturday. Apollyon, which only gave you access to the signing on Saturday, plus a couple of the evening, maybe one evening event. No, two evening events, I believe. And the Titan, which gave you essentially all access except for the Sunday brunch and Q&A panel. Those were 2 separate tickets that you had to purchase completely. So you could have the Deity ticket for the signing on Saturday, but also have tickets to the brunch and the Sunday brunch and Q&A panel. So there was some mixing and matching available. I have never attended the Sunday brunch and Q&A panel, so I cannot speak to that. But what I can tell you about my experiences for the 3 years I attended, and I had my first year I attended, I had the Deity ticket. My second year I attended, I had the Apollyon ticket, and this year I had the Titan ticket. So all 3 years I had different level tickets. And this year I actually stayed at the hotel. I didn't bother trying to get a room in the block. I have, through my job, I have access to something of a discount for hotel rooms. So I went ahead and just booked a room with that discount. So it was that way. I just knew I had it. I have yet to book a hotel room for next year, partially because I want to confirm that it will be at the hotel next year. So I will get into that as well. I will say that my motive for attending this year was very slightly different from previous years. The general thrust of my motive for attending for all 3, well, the first year I was just like, I just wanted to check it out and see what it was like. And it was a bit overwhelming, and it was interesting. I got to see a lot of different people, but it was just kind of overwhelming. And I probably bought more books than I would have expected. And that also happened the second year, where I definitely bought more books than I really planned on buying. This year, I would say the same, but the scale was much different. I was glad that I had the Titan ticket, because part of the logistics, even though they've done this for a number of years, I want to qualify some of my critiques in that with the acknowledgement that they have not held the event for 2 years. So there is a bit of distance from the last time and lessons learned, but I would have hoped that lessons learned would have carried over. So there is that. However, as another acknowledgement, something that I realized while talking with friends and just observing what was going on was that there were a lot of attendees this year who had never attended any kind of event like this prior. They were not only new to romance during the pandemic, but they were kind of new to reading during the pandemic and new to fandom within the scope of books. I don't know. I couldn't tell you if they were new to fandom, period, or if they were just new to book fandom, which I'm glad they were able to attend. And oh, there is a spider crawling around on my desk. Okay. Small, but caught my attention. So I'm going to just not worry about it. Anyway, so I want to burn it all down. It is, so the fandom. All right. So I think because there were a lot of people who had never attended an event like this prior, they were very new to the experience. And so for the people who have attended events like this prior to the pandemic, we had kind of a routine and we kind of knew what to expect. But because there were so many new people, that those expectations and how things played out weren't quite. I like to talk about this with authors, is that reader expectations are a thing and attendee expectations are a thing. And how do you manage them in order to both meet their expectations with what you are able to deliver, as well as just shaping them in general so that they have a good time. So I think those of us who had attended before had kind of slightly different expectations. I tried to go in with as few expectations as possible. I don't really actually like crowds, and this was a very crowded event. In fact, this event in terms of attendees was on the same scale as some of the smaller RT conventions that I've attended in the past. I believe there were around 1,300, somewhere around there, definitely more than 1,000 attendees. And I think that caused some issues. Now, there is some of the issues I've heard from people, because I've seen some of the, and that was their experience. So I'm not going to try to minimize what their experience was and what their expectations were, because if they had different expectations that weren't met, fair. I was a Titan ticket holder, which meant I had access to the panels Friday morning. I was able, and then there was a Thursday night event, and I think you had to have your badge, but I can't remember because I did not attend that event. But there was registration open Thursday afternoon, evening. I went down twice, actually, and I ended up getting my ticket the third time I went down, because the first time I went down, the entire registration level was filled with people. And I was just like, nope, not going to do that. Not worth it to me. And then the second time I went down, the entire registration level was filled with people. And there was a line into the next level up. They were connected by escalators. And that was a completely filled area. I stood in line briefly there before realizing I had left my phone up in my room. And I was just like, nope, I'm just going to go get my phone. I will come back later. I think I waited maybe another hour. I think it was an hour between the first attempt and the second attempt, and then another hour between the second and third attempts. And so I just don't like crowds. I'm like, you know what? I can wait. I'm fine. I'm not in a rush to see a lot of these authors. And I think that's the main difference. I personally was not in a rush to see a lot of these authors. There was one author who I wanted to see that had to get a wristband. I actually originally got wristbands for 2 authors, and then went back and got a third for Jennifer L Armentrout, since with Titan ticket holders this year, you got a copy of one of her books in hardcover format. It's very nice. And I realized, I'm like, oh, I should get this signed. So of the 3 Originally, you had to have wristband authors. I only saw 2 of them because I realized the third person, I've never read her. I just thought it would be interesting because I had recently heard about her. And I'm like, you know what? She's got a lot of people. I'm fine. I don't think the wristbands were managed as well as they had been in the past. In previous years, I hadn't really seen an issue with the wristbands. They had authors prior to the actual event that they knew were going to be high demand authors, and they just managed the wristbands. And then also during the event, they would have pop-up wristbands for authors who developed very long lines, sustained long lines. So I think the pop-ups mostly worked, with one caveat. Megan Quinn did not originally require a wristband, so I did not get a wristband for her. And then when I went into the room where she was located during the Titan only signing, they required wristbands, and that's fine. Oh, that was the other thing. No, it wasn't Megan Quinn. It was Lexi Ryan. Lexi Ryan, who did not originally require a wristband. So I missed seeing her on the first day. And the reason I wanted to see Lexi is because we're on a writing Slack together, and we had been like briefly talking. I wanted to say hi to her. That's all I wanted to do. I was just to say hi to her. I have no problem standing in line because that just does not bother me. But what I did have the issue with is that they required, they did the pop-up wristband for her on Friday for the Titan signing. I went to go Saturday morning to get a wristband to see her on Saturday. They did not require a wristband at that time. But when I went into that room, because on Saturday, the 2 groups, there was group A and group B, and depending on which group you were in one room for the morning and one room for the afternoon on Saturday. So she was in the room that I went to in the afternoon. So when I went in to get into her line, first thing, as soon as I got into the room, she was already requiring tickets. I'm like, I'm sorry, you knew yesterday she needed tickets. So why didn't you have her ticketed for today too? So that was my complaint, is that if somebody requires tickets during the Titan only signing, you should probably already have tickets sorted for them on Saturday. That is my one complaint. I had no problem going to get a ticket. I had been prepared to get a ticket Saturday morning and was told I didn't need one. But when I went in, I needed one. So just some issues with that. So yeah, I think that was the main thing, I think, with my not as great as it could have been experience, because there was another author who I wanted to see, who is Helena Hunting. I had done a pre-order for her. I had gotten a book from her, and we have been circulating around each other in author spaces, and so wanted to say hi to her and meet her in person. And glad I got to see that, because I thought I'm like, I haven't got an invoice for my pre-order. And then I got up to her for the sign. She's like, did you pay for this? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I did. She's like, you weren't supposed to. Sorry, I didn't tell you. So she made them give me my money back. It was like, okay. It was a funny thing for me. But the thing is that my wristband for her was 300 something. She didn't get, I don't think she got out of she definitely didn't get out of the 200s. And I don't think she got out of like the low 200s. So because I happened to have a pre-order, the person who was managing the line let me in, because I was just going to, I saw what the line was. My number wasn't about to be called, and this was during the Titan signing. And I was just like, I just need to pick up my pre-order. That's it. I was like, I was going to go ahead, skip from saying hi to her, but the person managing the line said, no, go ahead, get in. I'll just cross you off. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. So I definitely appreciated that, in that I got to say hi to Helena in person and everything. So that was really nice. But at the same time, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have a pre-order in hand already. So again, push-pull, it's that was some of the areas that I don't think were best managed by the event staff. From what I understand, there were also some issues with the hotel, and that was part of why the original ticket release date was delayed. They were originally going to release tickets for 2023 on August 7th, but they said that they were delaying that so they could have some conversations with, with the hotel. So so those were these are all my experiences, but let me get back to whether or not I would recommend it. Here's the thing. I was primarily there to say hi to a lot of author friends, and I wasn't necessarily there to buy books. I did buy some books. I had a pre-order from Helena, and I had a pre-order from Tracy Gerald, who's been a friend of mine for 25 years. And she's only started publishing, I think, about 3 or 4, maybe 3 years ago. So those were the two authors I had pre-orders from. I brought books from home to have Zoe York sign 2 of her nonfiction books. She was surprised by, which was happy. But I didn't bring anything else from home. So, and then I had gotten the book in the swag bag for Jennifer L Armentrout, the Titan swag bag. And there was actually also a book there from Tracy. So I brought that, but those were books that were at the event for me to bring. The only author that I'm pretty sure that I bought from was Megan Quinn, because I haven't read any of her books and I want to do so for research purposes. So that was, that was the only other author that I bought a book from there. But I knew a lot of the authors who were attending because a lot of them are local. And so I know them from local event interactions, as well as former RWA, being a member of the RWA chapter here in my previous life. And they were too. So, so lots of friends. I would say if you've never attended an event like this, maybe see if you can attend a smaller event first. See if here's the other thing. Travel. I did not have to get a hotel room. The hotel room was definitely an expense. But that is also something that I had business meetings while I was there with fellow authors. So I'm going to write that off as part of my business. And also making connections with some industry people. So those were my intentions. If you are attending to see a very specific author, and this is getting back to something I mentioned in the beginning, was that not all of the authors who were originally scheduled to come came because of various things. Like there was an author who I would have loved to have seen in person, but she had to cancel, and that was Brighton Walsh. One of the reasons I was kind of hoping to see her, but she canceled right around the time that I found out that my original pen name is going to be in an anthology that's coming out that Brighton is coordinating. So if you do a Google search for Brighton Walsh in anthology, you should probably be able to find out which one. But since I haven't publicly connected these names, I'm not comfortable saying that here, but feel free to message me. If you want to message me on Instagram, feel free to do that, and I'll tell you in DMs. Anyway, I would have loved to have seen Brighton in person because we haven't crossed paths in person frequently. And I would have loved to have talked to her about this anthology and stuff for that, but she had to cancel. There were a number of other authors who publicly announced their cancellation, and therefore the event staff then passed on the cancellation announcement. However, if an author did not publicly announce their cancellation, the only thing the event staff did was remove their name from the attending authors list. That cause some frustration, especially if the author had done pre-orders. So if you were looking forward to seeing an author, a very specific author, and you had done a pre-order, and then that person canceled, but just kind of ghosted and maybe only told the event staff, but didn't publicly announce it, you had no idea what was going on. And I think that needs to be said, that if an author cancels, the event will announce their cancellation. They don't need to say anything more than so-and-so has canceled their attendance at this event. If you had a pre-order, please contact the author. And that's, because I think personally that the event needs to make public when somebody who has been publicly announced as an attending author, when they cancel their attendance prior to the event. I think that is an absolute courtesy to the attending people, because a lot of these people traveled from out of the area to attend this. So they took on the cost of travel, whether that was a flight, whether that was driving and therefore gas with these gas prices lately. They also took on the cost of housing. So there were some people who were staying at the event hotel. There were people who were staying at nearby hotels or at Airbnbs. I was speaking with somebody who was originally came out here early, but the person who was supposed to be hosting her in their home got COVID. So that caused some issues for her, but that's a whole other thing. And yeah, in respect for the money that the attendees, not just the attending authors, but the attendees themselves are laying out for this event, because the Titan ticket was, I think, $125 plus fees. I think that needs to be taken into account. I will say, speaking of COVID, there was a 100% mask policy that was enforced for the most part, at least enforced as we walked into the door where the authors were signing. And I really appreciated that. I still, when I'm in public, I wear an N95 mask plus a cloth mask. That's what I'm comfortable with. And I appreciated the fact that there was a requirement for masks to be worn. I would say that it was, for the most part, followed by the attendees and authors. Not 100%, frankly, but for the most part, it was. And there was a thread in the attendee Facebook group afterwards saying, hey, if you test positive, please let us know. So I appreciated the commitment to public health. So there was that. There were some issues with the hotel, like I mentioned, one of the things being, speaking of public health, how hot the rooms were. It was like the air conditioning was broken. So I don't know what was going on with that. I hope that was one of the issues that were going to be addressed. So yeah, as to whether or not I would recommend it, I do so with caveats. I enjoyed myself. I've always enjoyed myself. But I also have a lot of friends amongst the authors. I have a lot of contacts in the area anyway, and I'm kind of more going for a combination of social, which was interesting with this year in that it was not as relaxed of an event socially as it was in prior years, where everybody was just hanging out in the bar, just talking in free-flowing groups. That wasn't as apparent this year as it was in previous years. But I also attend for professional purposes. So I was able to have meals with friends to discuss business issues. I was able to make contact with industry friends. So it was worth it to me to pay the cost of the ticket as well as the cost of the hotel. Again, business purposes for me. If I was traveling from out of the area, I don't know. I would say that if you like a lot of like kind of fantasy element and dark romance, this is probably a good event to attend. If there's going to be at least 10 authors that you would love to see, definitely attend. Like I said, I haven't attended the brunch before. Nalini Singh, I believe, was originally scheduled to attend either in 2020 or 2021. And she was going to be the featured author. And I was absolutely going to get that brunch ticket and the Q&A because I love Nalini. She was not the featured author this year. I don't think they had a featured author this year. Next year's featured author is Jodi Picoult. I'm not sure why, but I actually do know that Jodi Picoult is a fan of romance. So, but I also know there's been announcements of other authors who are attending next year, one of whom is Katie Roberts. So I absolutely will be attending next year because I'm friends with Katie and I want to spend some time with her if I can in person. And so I will probably get a hotel room for next year. I will probably get a Titan ticket for next year. Prices are going up. Titan tickets are going to be $150 something plus fees, and there's not going to be an Apollycon. So they're changing some things. So it will be interesting next year. I did talk with a volunteer who had attended Book Bonanza hosted by Colleen Hoover. And she told me that she thought that there was a definite difference in the authors who attended Book Bonanza and those who attended Apollycon, even though there was a lot of the same authors. But she felt that there was more of a focus on contemporary romance at Book Bonanza than there was at Apollycon. The focus on Apollycon was kind of like romance fantasy. And you can tell the difference between Colleen Hoover and Jennifer L Armentrout, the two sponsors. So, thank you, Halima. So I just want to show this. So I'm very happy to share my experiences. And then she also had a follow-up. Are there any writers' conferences you recommend? Well, funnily enough, in the same weekend, also in DC, basically kind of across the river from where Apollycon was the Romance Writers of America conference. It was, from what I heard, much, much smaller than it had been. And I have seen that a lot of people who attended it got a lot out of it. So if you're looking to write romance, I would also say if you're looking to write more traditional business publishing path, it probably couldn't hurt. I don't know which authors or speakers they had this year, so I can't speak to the current iteration of the RWA conference. But I've heard some people who attended who had a good experience with it. So I think it's something to check out and look for other possible reviews of it. Honestly, in the United States, I'm not sure writing wise what conferences are still going. If you are just looking for a general writers conference, I know the Surrey International's Writers Conference, which is out of Surrey, British Columbia. So up by Seattle, by Northwest Washington, outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. There have been a lot of people who have attended that they really liked. And yeah, I'm not sure for newer authors what's out there these days. And it's very frustrating because I used to be able to recommend Romance Writers of America without a thought. And I don't know that I can do that so much anymore. Speaking of Seattle, though, the former Seattle area Romance Writers of America chapter, which is now known as Emerald City Writers, they are hosting a conference, I believe, in September, maybe October. There is I don't know if the Georgia chapter is still a chapter of RWA, but they have also hosted a conference in the past. The former RWA chapter for New England Romance Writers, they generally host a conference. And I'm attending the Toronto Romance Writers conference. They're also a former chapter of RWA. They're hosting a conference in September. So feel free to message me on Instagram, Halima, and with some more details about what you're thinking about writing. And I can probably give you a few more targeted responses once because now that I'm thinking about it, it's like I can think of a lot of former chapters of RWA who host conferences. So go ahead and DM me on Instagram. So to close out Apollycon, I had a good time. I honestly did. Like I said, I went in just to reconnect with seeing people's faces because it had been 3 years, and I was very glad to have done that because I miss seeing people in person. It was something I just missed doing. So immediately after Apollycon, like almost immediately, so I got home from Apollycon early Sunday afternoon, or late morning, one of the two. And then in the evening, I met up with my one sister-in-law, her sister, and her dad for dinner because they were in town being tourists. And she had texted me Friday night that they were in town. So I had that. And then the next day, my best friend from college was in town with her kids. And so they were here for 3 days. So I spent time with them Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then worked Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning, and then flew to Chicago Thursday evening. So it was just a lot of stuff going on. And trying to get a handle on planning, I was just like, I can't plan. I have to live in the moment and just do what I can. So I didn't have a whole lot of planner stuff. I wasn't leaning into it as much as I usually do. And for some people, when you're that hectically busy, you prefer getting a handle on things means like sitting down and planning. So sometimes I just grab a notepad and I just brain dump. But I was just in the moment with people that I was like, what, just see what crops up and move forward. But going to Chicago, I decided to take 2 planners with me. And so I brought my MäksēLife flagship, which, by the way, they are currently having a warehouse sale. So if you haven't used them before, you want to try them, go check out that sale. The reason I chose the flagship was because I wanted to continue my practice of journaling every night in it. And I don't think I've missed a day. And I don't think I've missed. So if I missed a day, I went back and filled it in. So I think every single day is filled in. I also brought my Daily Duo, which is my work planner, because I was going to be working from my parents. And here's the thing. If you haven't flown in a while, and this was a thing even before pandemic, just as a heads up, because I got hit with it before pandemic as well. But when you have something as thick as this, paper-wise, and another very thick paper thing stacked on top of it, and you take it through TSA check with you. And I had pre-check. I finally did TSA pre-check. So I didn't have to take anything off. I still got pulled aside to have my bag checked because I had my MäksēLife flagship with my work planner, which is currently at work, stacked on top of each other. And it was too much paper stacked on top of each other. So they pulled me aside to check out, see what was going on in my bag. So just as a heads up, when you are going through any kind of travel security, be careful with how many books or paper items you stack on top of each other, just in case it triggers bag check. Or if you just don't think of it, that is a possibility. So just as a heads up. So coming back, and family time was great in Chicago. It was really good. I, again, just went with flow, but again, I went with what's happening in the moment. I didn't sit out and do any planning. But coming back, I've been, again, busy. And, oh, yes, this is true. It happens with tarot card decks as well. Yes. Anything that you have a block of like paper. My friend Zoe York, I told this to her because we were talking about this, and she's like, yeah, that's because it registers as C4 on the scanners, as in the plastic boom thing. And so even though it's not, that's apparently what it registers as the scanners as possible boom thing. And so that's why they have to check. She was talking about specifically a couple of books that, because this was the thing, is that Zoe was traveling from where she lives to DC for the Apollycon event, and she was bringing books with her to be signed. She had sent some ahead to the person who was acting as her assistant for the event, but there was other stuff that she had to bring with her, and she didn't want it to get lost in case checked luggage got lost. So she carried it with her in her carry-on. And yeah, you have to be careful, especially with print-on-demand books, even more so than stuff like this. So yeah, so travel. Interestingly, when I flew back to DC, even though I had stacked them the same way, they didn't get pulled at Midway. So I don't know what was going on. But things I need to get back into, just to get back into my routine. I need to get back into daily planning, because that definitely helps me keep me on track with what I want to be doing, especially because I am planning on starting my next book on Monday. I've actually already started it, but in terms of trying to do my 5 days a week writing that I liked to do and will get me done with the first draft in a certain amount of time. I want to start that on Monday. So I will need to get back into the daily planning and my HB90 planning. I've got stuff that I need to do after this with regards to HB90 that I have a newsletter for my one pen name that needs to go out on Monday. So I need to get that finished. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting back into the writing. And the other thing I did this morning before I was rudely interrupted by a fire alarm for our building was meal planning. I definitely need to get back with meal planning, because that is important to me in order to have meals in my apartment for me to eat, but it also helps me manage my finances better. So I'm not just grabbing takeout every night, or last 2 days I went into the office, so I grabbed, I didn't have any milk in the house, so I had to grab breakfast. And I picked up breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts on my way to work. So that's expensive. That builds up after a while. So I just need to be able to manage my expenses. And one of the ways I do that is with meal planning. So I've got a meal plan in order for next week, and I got my grocery order submitted. So that should hopefully be delivered later tonight. And yeah, so it's very, very busy travel. Sometimes just going with the flow is not helpful, but for me, it was, because with all of the people that I had to interact with over the last 2 weeks, in some ways, that's the best thing to do, is with the way I personally operate. It's nice to have plans beforehand, especially for events like Apollycon. If you want to specifically see somebody, trying to make meetup plans with them prior to the event is a good thing. Honestly, I'd forgotten how to conference. And so this was a reminder for me as to, oh, this is how I conference. I will be going to a writing conference in November. That is for more experienced writers, where you have to have at least 5 books published. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that, but that's also is going to involve some travel. So I'm going to do my best to be careful. This was the other thing when traveling, again, because I prefer to be as masked up as possible, and because of the higher incident rates of a new strain of, what it is, pandemic. I traveled with a N95 mask and a cloth mask, and as well as a visor that I got. And I was very happy I had that, especially on the way here. The way to Chicago, because our flight was delayed due to weather, and I had kids in the row behind me coughing. And as I was walking through Midway, I literally, as I was passing them, had somebody cough just into the air, and I felt something hit my arm. It was just so gross. And but on the way back, it was actually kind of nice because I still had my mask and visor on, but I ended up with the entire row to myself. It was just me in the row, and I think there were some empty seats in other parts, but I think I was the only person with an entire row to themselves. It was glorious. So that's pretty much my August update. The story for the anthology I got sent in. The finals has already been sent in to the organizers. So if you do a search for Brighton Walsh and anthology, you should be able to find information on that if you're at all interested. All proceeds will be going to support reproductive rights organizations. I will also, like I said, be starting a new book for my new pen name on Monday. So I hope to have that done, if I'm lucky, by the conference that I'll be attending in November. So yeah, those are my August update plans. Does anyone have any questions before I check out? I appreciate the questions that were sent in. The question that was sent in via Instagram. Halima, thank you for asking the question here during the chat. Thank you all so much for joining me live. I hope you are having a lovely day. It's gorgeous here in DC. Finally, when I left Chicago, it was a gorgeous day there as well. So I hope. Oh, Lima, thank you. Here, let me pop this up. What type of book are you writing? So the book I will be writing is steamy small town contemporary romance. I have decided that that's actually where I want to spend the next couple of years of my writing career. So I have a 3-book series planned, and this is book 1. And it is going to be under a new pen name, which I will give some thought to announcing probably once I have at least a couple of books out. I have kind of written that before, not necessarily in the small town setting, but it's not too far off of what I wrote under my previous pen name. So with a lot of things that I've learned over the years, as well as things that I've been reading and learning about through the pandemic and kind of like immersing myself into the business aspect of publishing, romance publishing, I really want a tightly knit series to launch this new pen name, and I definitely have that with these 3 books. So I am really, really looking forward to writing this because I'm getting all these scene ideas as I'm doing things. Like yesterday, I was walking to work, and I was originally not going to have a dog in the story, even though dogs are very popular and I love dogs. But as I was walking to work, this scene just film wise was in my head, and I was just like, oh, I need to write this. So I made notes on one of my breaks at work yesterday. So I'm looking forward to getting to the point where that needs to go into the book. Because I think it's just going to be a fun scene to write. But I'm really excited, and I haven't been this excited about writing in a while. It's like, I hope you can see this on my face. Just the thought of what I'm going to be diving into is making me so happy. And I give all the credit to the work I did with the Better Faster Academy, as well as my therapists and MäksēLife life coaching group, the Club Moxie 1.0 group, as well as the 2.0 group. And all of those coming together has helped me launch, get me out of burnout, and the burnout I was in, both writing wise and life wise. I would not be here without all 3 of those working together. So, and I'm really looking forward to writing these books because I'm hoping to make people happy with them. That is my goal for these books, is to just have a nice, sweet, and steamy, because I like writing steamy, give them just a fun experience. So thank you so much for asking. Anybody have any other questions? Thank you all so much for being here. I hope that the Apollycon info was informative. I was not expecting to speak as long on the topic as I did, but I I think that there are a lot of people who really enjoyed their time. I saw a lot of very happy people and very excited people to meet the authors that they had really loved. And many of them were meeting these authors for the first time. So I was that made me happy. Even though I wasn't necessarily there to meet authors as a reader, I was so happy to see readers there meeting authors that they love and authors that bring joy to their lives, especially these days. So I hope you all have a lovely day. If you have any questions, please drop those in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future videos, things that you would love to see me talk about or do, please drop those in the comments as well. And until next time, I'm hoping to go live again next Saturday, August 20th. I don't have a topic yet, but that is the current plan, is just to go live because I love seeing you all and visiting with you all. I hope you have a lovely weekend if this is your weekend or whenever your weekend is next. And may all your dreams be ruby dreams. Bye-bye and end broadcast.